Okay, I'd like to talk to you now about the drum sander. Drum sander is a fantastic piece of equipment. It's designed primarily for putting a smooth, flat surface on just about anything. What it's actually not designed to do is thickness bits of wood, bring them down to a particular thickness. However, that's one of the main things we use it for. But we have to be a bit careful when we're doing that. Anyway, first things first. The first thing we always do when we come to use the drum sander is open the lid up and have a look at the drums. You'll notice that there are two of them. The one in front, the one closest to you, is running 80 grit paper, and the one at the back is running 120 grit paper. So this one does most of the work removing material, and the one at the back is designed to just clean up some of the scratches left by the one in the front. They've been set up. There's absolutely nothing for the user to do back here except look at them and check to see whether or not they are in good shape, whether they're clean. One thing that can happen when you're running particularly resinous woods, blackwood, rosewood in particular, and some of the darker timbers, is that if they run through too aggressively, you can get a build-up of gunk on the drums, and that'll be left there, and the next person that comes and runs something through will end up with a pretty ugly mess on whatever piece of wood they're putting through. You have a look on this one right at the moment over the back here, there's an example of what I'm talking about. This is very minor, but this black resin that's now burned into the drum, but you can get that much worse, and we want to avoid that. So firstly, have a look at the drums, and make sure that they're relatively clean. Apart from that little bit over there that I just pointed out, these are in pretty good shape. One of the things that we have in the workshop are these rubber blocks, and they're designed, they're abrasive cleaning blocks, and we can use them on all of the sanding machines. And with the machine running, we just run these across the rubber, across the drum, and it cleans a lot of this dust and muck off. I'll demonstrate that briefly in just a moment. So, step number one, check the drums and make sure there's nothing unpleasant. And you should do that every time you come to the machine. Not just at the once in the beginning of the class, but every time you come. I'll just turn it on briefly and clean the drums with the rubber so you can see how that works. Perhaps I should explain how to turn the machine on before I do it. Over here you've got the controls. There's a panel on the left here with a red switch and a knob. That controls the conveyor belt that feeds the work into the machine. The big box on the right has got a green on button and a big red off button that says emergency. When this has been used to stop it, it's got an isolator in it, which means that the switch has been isolated. In order to turn the machine on, this button needs to be pulled out, and it gives quite a clear click. And when it's been unclicked like that, then we can turn it on. These controls, as I said, control the conveyor belt, and at the moment this is switched off, so the conveyor won't be working, and this is the speed control for it up here. Let me turn the machine on. So that's got the drums running. Just going to lift the lid so you can see them. They're rotating at the moment. To clean them, just run the rubber across there. Okay, so you can now have a look and see that these sanding drums are a lot cleaner than they were before. There's a bit of residual rubber on there. You'll notice, however, that black stuff that was on here earlier is still there. This won't get rid of that stuff. We've got to use something else for that, but that's another story. The other thing I'll say is that when you're running these and when you're cleaning them, you really need to have the dust extractor running. I've left it off while I'm doing this demonstration, and that's open. But we've left it off so that you can hear what's going on while I'm speaking. So right then I demonstrated turning on the drums using the green button on this box on the right. I'm going to turn it on again, unlock the emergency, start it up, and then I'm going to talk about the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt can be turned on, and so long as the machine's running, the conveyor belt will run. And when it's turned to minimum, number 3 on the dial, it runs pretty slowly, and then you can crank it up to a fairly high speed. And when you turn the machine off, it automatically stops. But if it's left on, the next time we turn it on, it'll start again automatically. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is feeding a piece of wood through the machine. So we've got something that we want to sand, and at the moment it doesn't fit. This big winder on the left-hand side of the machine controls the height of the conveyor. You can wind it down and wind it up. So we've got the down and up on here, so we want to wind it down so we've got a little bit of extra space. And now we can put our material in there and there's no hang up. As we wind the table up, it'll get to a point where it starts to grab the piece of wood. So it's grabbed it there now and it's being held by the rollers. We want to back it off until it's just sliding through. Next we're going to start the machine, run the conveyor fairly slowly, and as it's going through we start to wind the table up, turning the handle clockwise until we just hear it engage on the wood. Again, I'm not going to run the dust extractor at the moment just so that you can hear what's going on. But normally the first thing you do is turn the dust extractor on because this thing creates a lot of dust. Unlock the emergency button. I'm going to turn this to minimum speed. I've got that just sitting in there. Start my machine. The conveyor belt starts, and then I wind this up slowly, slowly, slowly. Until we just hear it engage on the wood. So you hear that? And now I turn the speed up just to run it through. You can see it's just started sanding, but it's hardly taken any off. Turn that off so that I can talk over it. We now know that the drum and the table are set to the starting thickness of our piece of material, and in order to adjust the amount that we're sanding off it, obviously we wind the table up, we turn the handle anti-clockwise. Now the controls on this are such that a quarter turn on this raises the table by about 1 millimetre. When you're sanding something, there's no way you want to be taking off 1 millimetre of material at a time. You only want to be taking maybe a quarter of a millimetre at most. And so if 90 degrees on this is 1 millimetre, the maximum you ever want to adjust this is a portion of that. Think about the hands of the digits on a clock face. So between 6 and 9, you'd want to go from 6 to 7 to 8. In fact, maybe not even, maybe 4 steps between 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock is about what we're talking about. It's only small adjustments like this that we want to make. Any more than that and you'll overload the machine, you'll burn the wood, probably cause it to shut down and probably make a mess of the drums. So let me just run this through one more time for you and demonstrate it. So a couple of things I'll say about what you might have just seen. First of all, you will have noticed that the adjustments on the depth control are quite fine, as I explained. Secondly, when I put my piece of material through the drum sander, I was putting it on a bit of an angle rather than just straight through. Put it on a little bit of an angle. I did that for two reasons. First of all, it spreads the sanding out across a wider area of the drum. It also, and uses a fluid which perhaps gives us a more even finish on here. Secondly, if we put it through this way one time and then we put it on the opposite angle the next time, what it does is it removes material more quickly than it would otherwise do, because we're going across the grain. The final pass I recommend, maybe without even adjusting the depth control, is to run it through straight in order to get the sanding lines lined up with the grain of whatever material it is you're sanding. Probably one other thing to comment on is that we sand everything from red cedar soundboards to Gidgee fretboards. So Gidgee is one of the hardest timbers around, and red cedar is one of the softest. You really have to be thoughtful about what you're putting through, and obviously with red cedar in particular, and well, with both woods, for two reasons. As a soft wood, if you run it through, it'll go through, but it'll really pull the wood off fast, and you may end up thinner than you hoped. And secondly, with something like Gidgee or ebony or one of the hardwoods, rosewoods, you'll just end up burning black charcoal onto those sanding drums. The other thing I want to mention is that the manufacturer's specification for the machine says that the minimum thickness of material that you want to run through here is around 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. We're routinely taking soundboards, backs and sides down to 2 millimeters, 2.5 millimeters, 3 millimeters, less than that. Now it turns out the machine can actually go a little bit below 6, but what we recommend when we're getting down to doing really thinner pieces is we put them on a carrier board, and there'll be a number of these carrier boards. They provide the thickness to actually bring our material up so that we can actually sand down to less than the 6 millimeters. We get down to 2 millimeters. And so look for the carrier board if we're going to be going down to very thin thicknesses. I think that pretty much wraps it up. Whilst we start with the conveyor belt slow, when I'm running material through it, I'll typically turn the knob up to maximum or somewhere near maximum, and so we're only taking small amounts off. And I think the last comment I'll make is that down here on the side of the machine there's what looks like a depth indicator. Frankly, I'm inclined to take this thing off and throw it away, because never in all the time I've used the machine have I ever referred to that. By starting with the machine just barely skimming the wood as we did, and then measuring it as we go, that's how we judge the thickness. I don't believe that this is accurate enough to really work in a meaningful way, so we ignore that. That's it, thank you.